Hello, it's Dr. Steve Hassan. It's Wednesday, June 11th, 2025. Thanks for joining me on this live stream. I'm very interested to hear from all of my viewers and listeners about my messaging and whether or not they feel this is really valuable. I know there's a bunch of people who like to ask me questions directly, and we're on multiple platforms. We're doing growing on Instagram. I think we have 143,000 now on Instagram, which is great. And I was just speaking with former Tea Party Republican Congressman Joe Walsh, who is now proclaimed himself a Democrat, who invited me on his Substack to do a live with him. And I've done a Substack live before with Lev Parnas. I don't know how many of you are on Substack as well, and whether or not you like when I'm interacting with other people or if I'm just here answering questions directly to you. But let us know. So, some really big topical things, but there are so many sources of information. My expertise is the whole cult of Trump, psychological warfare, understanding how the mind can get hacked and how our attention can be diverted from the important things. And so rather than just restate news that you can get from other sources, I want to give you my unique angle based on 49 years since my deprogramming from the Moonies. But of course, my time in the Moonies counts, so over 50 years. So I guess I'd like to start with the fact that there's this 3,000 person a day quota by Stephen Miller and Trump to put ICE out there and arrest as many people as possible, and without due process, without even specific information about any criminal wrongdoing at all, going into Home Depot, going into restaurants, invading people's communities. And the situation in Los Angeles is quite upsetting and unique, with the National Guard being called in and now Marines supposedly coming in for basically peaceful citizen protests. And this has never happened before, I should say, in decades, where a president sent in National Guards. I think the last time was around segregation and just protecting Black students who were being sent to white schools, and the racist South did not like that. So that was the last time a sitting president went against and without the invitation of a governor to send the National Guard. Interestingly, I listened to Republican former Congressman Adam Kissinger, who was saying that by implementing and federalizing the National Guard the way Trump did, that they are no longer National Guard. They are equivalent to combat infantrymen on the ground. And Governor Newsom has said, "You're escalating. You're creating more problems. Please go away." To which Trump threatened to arrest Newsom, who said, "Bring it on." And how California is going to sue the Trump administration for the damage that they're doing. But we're seeing all around the country people basically realizing they can't just sit this one out. This is their future, and we don't want authoritarianism. So we're seeing more and more people come out, and I hope and pray peacefully, because all the Trump people want is for people to be instigators to do violence. And some of these people are paid to do violence. so that the administration can justify their harsh tactics. And I think the justification, now that they've even talked about bringing in Marines, who are elite killing soldiers, by bringing them in, it's signaling to Americans and the world that we're going towards an authoritarian state, to martial law, which is very upsetting. All of this is a great distraction from the feud between Musk and Trump, I might add. And interestingly, Musk is dialing back a bit and deleted apparently his post about Trump being in the Epstein files. So I know that there's a lot of pressuring by different forces, but my colleagues, who are really much more tuned in than I am to the intelligence world, tell me that Putin is upset with Trump, and that politicians in Washington that are being influenced by Russia are withdrawing support for Trump and his abominable bill that has all kinds of things in it, but most importantly, it's adding $2.4 trillion to the national deficit, and also taking away some 15 million Americans off of Medicaid. But there's so much more in that disgusting bill, including no AI regulation for 10 years. I know Musk and Zuckerberg and Bezos love that, but that's very upsetting. So what I want to say to everybody is, protect your mind. Don't dose on news all day long. Like, live your life, do your jobs, uh, cultivate your friendships, and be active. And this coming Saturday is No King's Day. So I want to really encourage peaceful protests wherever you are. Make a sign, go to the center of your town, even if it's a small town, and just put up a sign, no kings, or whatever you want to say about, we want human rights. We want due process. We want people to care about their neighbors and not just stand by as blacks and browns and Latinos are being scooped up by a racist, bigoted administration. And I believe I heard that the head of Latinos for Trump has now criticized Trump in terms of the ICE raids and such. Also, I want to just comment on Palantir, Peter Thiel's company that has been centralizing data. And now with Musk's infiltration of our most sensitive government computers, they want to create a complete database on each American. This is going to mirror what China does to its people, so that it's completely surveillance controlled state where you have to be careful of who you talk to and what you say, because you can lose social standing. They can threaten your family and friends. It's truly horrifying. So I really want people to do a double take on the whole digital world and how AI is being pushed by every major company now, from Microsoft to Google to Apple, etc. I like that AI can help, but large language models are so flawed. We need a much more ethically based system without all the garbage and hallucination and lies that are put out by bad actors. And I remember reading that Russia was hacking all of the AI platforms with their propaganda. And the use of bots is extremely concerning. Um, I just want to talk about it. We need independent journalism. And so there are individuals like Aaron Parnas, the attorney son of Lev Parnas, who was involved with the Giuliani and the Ukraine debacle, where he was sent over to gather dirt on the Bidens, particularly Hunter Biden. If you haven't watched From Russia with Lev, please do. But check out Aaron Parnas. Check out the Misalis brothers on Midas Touch. Brett and Jordy and Ben have been messaging as well in real time, short bursts. Like David Packman also. There are independent people, Anthony Davis, messaging, respectful, grounded news and information. And with that, I also want to mention Ground News. If you do Cult Expert, you can help us a little bit. But I like Ground News because it gives a story and gives you access to all the different ways the story is being covered on the left and the right, and how much more it may be covered on the right than the left. Eliza says, hello, I just signed up for one of your courses. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for signing up for my courses. I have a brand new workbook called Understanding Cults that go along with the course, the big course. And there's a CME for psychiatrists, or CEU for psychologists, social workers, and counselors. It's an over 9-hour course. And there's a version of it for family, friends, ex-members. And it's a deeper dive into understanding the foundational knowledge about cults and mind control. So I definitely want to invite people to check out my courses and check out the workbook as well. And if you haven't read the Cult of Trump book yet, please do. It will give you an explanatory framework that's unlike any else you've read or heard about. And Olivia just said she joined my channel. Thank you. We're creating a premium channel, Dr. Stephen Hassan. We're releasing podcast videos a week before they come out to the public for free. Please check out my Substack. You can check out Substack for 2 weeks free. And we are just changed our request to $5 a month. And you'll be helping us continue to do this work, because I'm basically been funding this out of my own consultation fees and my own counseling work. And we want to do more. I know that I started How to Talk to Your Family and Friends in MAGA guidebook, but I got sick, and we're just it's hard to keep up. So we really would love more financial support to put out more important content on this topic. Let's see, Sumi, what would you say about the cult of Nexium? I have many, many pages on my Freedom of Mind website about Nexium, the cult of Keith Raniere, the subject of The Vow on HBO. It was a multi-level marketing coaching cult, and they were using NLP, or neuro-linguistic programming. I've interviewed Sarah Edmondson. I've been on her podcast with her husband, Nippy. They do a podcast called A Little Bit Culty. And Anthony and Sarah have a book that they're going to be putting out next year. And they've been helping a lot of folks because people know about Nexium and the fact that Keith Raniere was sentenced to 120 years in jail. Good news this week, by the way, with the One Taste cult. There was a Netflix documentary on this sex cult, and the head of it, and I believe another leader, was found guilty, and their bail was revoked, and they're going to jail. And it's a very positive piece of news for those of us survivors who really believe that cult leaders need to be held accountable in courts of law. So I'm very excited about that. There are more cults now than ever, and they are recruiting online. Let's see, Holly, I am transferring to Prescott College from NAU for the clinical counseling course after getting 2 disruption reports during the last semester because I talked about the cult of Trump. LOL. That's so interesting. Yeah, so thank you for talking about the cult of Trump. And unfortunately, we're in a situation with an authoritarian dictator wannabe who's going to do this big military parade when everyone else in the country will be protesting him. I saw a video of dozens and dozens of tanks being sent on trains to DC for this parade for his birthday. And part of what dictators do is they want to control information. They want to threaten anyone who says anything negative. They only want propaganda. They want to stage manage events. So if you want to understand how people can still believe in Trump and think what he's doing is good, you need to pay attention to the framing and the messaging, that because you can talk to people in Los Angeles who will say everybody's peaceful. Yes, there was one isolated area where there's some violent protesters, but for the Trump people, they focus on the violent protesters and ignore all of the peaceful protesters. And so we really want to pay attention. And if you're at a peaceful protest, videotape it and share it on social media. And do your best to reach out to big influencers who have big audiences. And I'm definitely putting out the request to help me spread the word in a much bigger way than I have so far about the cult of Trump. People doing book clubs and other things to get people reading it and understanding it. Let's see, K Clock, humans are social creatures. Yes, we have thrived as a species because by nature we want to help each other. Yes, we need to lean into that now and fight Trump's and Miller's culture of hate. Couldn't agree more with you. And unfortunately, malignant narcissists, that Trump is one, and I wrote about his malignant narcissism. That's a term Eric Fromm developed in analyzing Adolf Hitler, I might add, and is the stereotypical profile of cult leaders. I did a chapter 3 of the cult of Trump, comparing Trump with Jim Jones and Moon, my former cult leader, and Hubbard of Scientology. But the people who have no empathy, the malignant narcissists, are trying to make it normal to not care about the harm that they're causing and such. But overwhelmingly, people are good and they will look after their neighbor. And they need to understand that we need to protect each other now, not in a month from now, not in 6 months from now, because it will get worse if we don't do more now. And our peaceful protest needs to be aimed at the Supreme Court. It needs to be aimed at every GOP politician, because we need to get them reconnected with their conscience, with rule of law, with the Constitution, and remind them of their duty to us, that they are to serve us and not just kiss the ring of Donald Trump. So I propose love. If you've seen my influence continuum graphic, it's about love. It's right there, love. And hate is over on this side. Hate. And Love's stronger than mind control. And if you have family and friends who are still thinking Trump's great, I really believe in respectful, curious, warm questioning and engagement, not calling them names, not trying to argue, not trying to persuade them with logic or facts, but just really let them see your humanity and that you care about them and that you don't understand how they could support what's happening today. Let's see, Agolf, what happens when a veteran lies down in front of Trump's tank parade in a Tiananmen Square moment to protest the 6,000 healthcare workers fired at the VA to pay for this? So I don't know how many of our listeners know about the Tiananmen Square protest in China. It had an anniversary recently. It was a major protest against the authoritarianism of China, and activists would stand in front of tanks basically, and fortunately the tanks didn't run them over. And it was a very important thing that there was media on that moment, because I think the Chinese government officials knew that how bad it would look if a tank ran over an unarmed citizen waving a white flag. And your question is interesting about what happens if somebody lies down or stands in front of a tank. My guess is that soldiers will rush over and grab the person and yank them out of the way of the tank. Um, I just finished a book by Ann Nelson, by the way, called Red Orchestra. Anne wrote an incredibly important book called Shadow Network on the Council for National Policy, which is a multi-billion-dollar think tank that has been orchestrating for the last 40, 50 years what's happening today. They put the founding editor in place of my former cult in terms of the Washington Times, which, by the way, is singly responsible for the most climate science denial, the Washington Times and the Moonies. Anyway, Red Orchestra, very briefly, is Anne's book about the German resistance movement against Hitler. And I had no idea there was a very active, large resistance movement throughout the World War II. And there was an estimated 3 million Germans who opposed Hitler, who were putting out information about what was really going on in the war and the attacks on the Jews and other things like that, doing sticker campaigns. In the book, very thoroughly researched, she talked about some 300,000 people being rounded up by the Gestapo and killed for speaking out against Hitler. But I had no idea that this had happened in World War II. It's not part of our history. And many of these people were passing information to Russia, and Russia was on part of the coalition to defeat Hitler. And people forget that. But most of the resistors were not Russians. They were not Russian agents. They just wanted to put out information against the regime to stop the war and to stop Hitler. So anyway, check that book out. I'm trying to get Anne on my podcast. And by the way, my podcast this week is with a former Rajneesh member who was recruited as a child because her mother joined. A fascinating interview with Cerrito Carroll, and how terrible Wild Wild Country was as a documentary, because it didn't go into trauma and brainwashing and rape of children and abortions and sterilizations and so many other critical things. And there's a doc that was made by former Rajneeshis that we would like to find. If anyone's listening who knows somebody at Netflix or one of the streaming services, we really want to get that documentary to the public. Let's see, another comment. I wonder, Dr. H, if you have thoughts on the pathology of Stephen Miller, who grew up in a Jewish family in prosperous Santa Monica and is now leading the military occupation of LA. I have a lot of thoughts about Stephen Miller. I actually watched a video, I think it was his uncle was talking about how how horrified he was that Stephen Miller was doing the things that he was doing, and how it was completely opposite the values that he was raised with. And I guess my thoughts are that brainwashing and mind control exists. And I question, after I watched that interview, that interview with the relative of Stephen Miller, I'm of the opinion that he got radicalized and programmed, and whether or not it was who did it and how it was accomplished. But I can be honestly say, as a Moonie, I changed my beliefs 180 degrees from my values. And if Moon had ordered me to pick up an AR-15 and shoot children, I would have done it without hesitation, because I was trained to obey and not think for myself. And I was indoctrinated with such phobias that I thought demons would be attacking me if I had a doubt. So I was really a Manchurian candidate, except that I knew I was working for the Moonies. But I didn't know I was working for the Korean CIA and dark ops unit of the CIA when I was in the cult. But I want to believe people can leave extremist radical cults and become human again, especially if they had an identity and values prior to their recruitment and indoctrination. Let's see, Eliza, I never realized how cult adjacent my experience has been at multiple times in my life until I started studying the bite model. Wild. They're always knocking at our door. Thanks for your comment. And honestly, psychology has evolved over the decades. We know so much more about the mind. And unfortunately, cults like the Jehovah's Witnesses and the Mormons, which were founded in the 1800s, countless people have left these two American made cults and started splinter cults or got into other cults. And so there's like this mutation effect where there are, I believe, tens of millions of Americans who've experienced cults or undue influence or brainwashing. And for those of you who haven't read The Cult of Trump yet, I talk a lot about the New Apostolic Reformation Network, which is an estimated 30 to 40 million Americans who follow somebody who claims to be a prophet of God. I'm holding my hand up because I'm blessing myself as a prophet or an apostle. And these people claim they talk to God directly and that God told them that Trump won the 2020 election. But they operate this pyramid structure, authoritarian church or mega church with controlling behavior, information, thoughts, and emotions to make people believe they're spiritual warriors and that all Democrats are satanic or demonic or traffickers. So we really want to encourage people who grew up in fundamentalist evangelicalism and who understand the whole prosperity gospel and this nonsense that people can talk to God and have the authority to take over the government is not what Jesus taught. It is not at all what's in the New Testament. Time Lord says, "Hi, Dr. Hassan. I didn't realize it, but last Wednesday was my 1-year anniversary of leaving the Watchtower. Thanks for all the good work. Keep it up." Congratulations. The Watchtower is the Jehovah's Witnesses cult. And for those who may be listening for the first time, when my book Combating Cult Mind Control first came out in 1988, I started getting letters, because this is way before email got created. I started getting letters from ex-elders of the Watchtower saying, "Great book, but how come you didn't mention the Jehovah's Witnesses? How come you didn't mention the Watchtower?" To which I responded, "Why?" And they said, "Because we underlined the whole book, and your book is about our group that I was raised in." And I said, "Teach me." And that was the main person that I credit for teaching me way back in '89, the beginning of the year, was Randy Waters, who was an elder at Bethel. He was head of the printing presses. And he said, "Come to LA and I'll introduce you to a bunch of ex-members and we'll teach you." So I taught them about my work and they taught me about the Watchtower, and I've been helping people exit the Watchtower ever since. And it gives me great fulfillment to know that my work keeps helping more people to wake up and get out of authoritarian mind control cults. So I don't plan to stop my work. I'm not getting younger. I'm definitely inviting younger people, especially people who have mental health training, to take my course, read my books, and become part of the Freedom of Mind network, because there's so many people who need assistance. And I want to do more lives. I want to do more courses. I'm going to probably do some more live streams on Substack. And we're developing our YouTube channel. So please come over and check that out. We'll be developing premium content for there. That's what I am told we need to do in order to help build a subscriber base. Tracy, heading back to the protest downtown LA today to stand with and for my immigrant neighbors. Thank you, Tracy, for being a responsible citizen and for standing up for others. And it will take a village, and we want to show, again, we're not going to convince Trump, but we're trying to convince the Supreme Court justices. We're trying to convince the GOP politicians. We're trying to convince the billionaire supporters that this is not cool. We don't think this is okay. We don't want our minds hacked. We don't want to lose our justice system and our checks and balances. We don't want everyone to think that white nationalism, Christian nationalism is good. Oh, and I just read today the Southern Baptist Association is voting to now attack gay marriage. And I want to say, when Combating came out in 1988, the Southern Baptists endorsed my book. Of course, my book was focused on the Moonies and other extremist cult groups that were very unpopular. And over the decades, and when I bought the rights back to Combating and expanded it to include trafficking victims and extremist cult and Mormons and Jehovah's Witnesses, it's gotten more and more relevancy. And if you haven't read Combating, I really still recommend it. All of my books are in audio, by the way, except for the workbook, which is brand new. Let's see, we have a comment from Professor Khan. When I first psychotherapist last year and told him about my Scientology experience. He said he didn't think he could help me. My case was too complex. My current therapist is helping. So I think this is a good, interesting comment. So when you get trained as a mental health professional, if somebody presents an issue that you're not trained for, you need to refer them or you need to get supervision. And there's not a single college in America, and I don't believe in the whole world, that teaches people how to do therapy with victims of authoritarian mind control cults. Isn't that amazing? It's 2025 and I've been doing this work for 49 years, and there's still not one university that is training graduate students or psychiatrists. I just did a talk for fourth year psychiatry residents at Harvard before I came on this live stream, but there's not a single course. And so I have a CME CEU course that's online at CEGO. Go to freedomofmind.com and learn and get continuing ed credits. And if you know of any university that wants to utilize my curriculum, because I have so much more I want to teach, have them get in touch with Freedom of Mind. Let's see, what's next? What do you know of Bethel Church Reading and their School of Supernatural Ministry? Just that I've heard of it, but I can't say off the top of my head that I remember, and just know that there are thousands of cults, and many of them have hundreds of names also over their history. So the key thing is look at their behaviors. Look at their website. What do they say about themselves? What they leave out about themselves. Study the influence continuum, study the bite model, study malignant narcissism, and ask a lot of direct questions. And if you don't get direct, concrete answers, walk away, because you don't want to be involved with something that isn't going to answer honestly and directly. Let's see. Sila on TikTok asked, did you say the Moonies are a CIA group? Actually, I did. I'll tell you briefly the basis of my comment. So when I first got deprogrammed from the Moonies, it was May 11th, 1976. There was a congressional subcommittee investigation that was ongoing into Korean CIA activities in the United States, because the former number 2 man in the South Korean embassy in DC defected, and then a KCIA agent defected with the actual written plans, and the Moonies were on the list, that 10-point list. So this congressional subcommittee investigation took place. By the way, I have the 80-page conclusion summary on freedomofmind.com if you want to read exactly what they came up with. Robert Betcher, the staff director, wrote a book called Gifts of Deceit that I contributed heavily to. But what blew my mind about that investigation, well, first of all, I thought they were going to shut down the Moonies because there was so overwhelming amounts of evidence of illegal activities. I knew of many illegal activities that I told them about. And the report came out October 31st of 1978. And guess what happened November 18th of 1978? Jonestown happened, and Congressman Leo Ryan was assassinated, who was a member of that investigation. And Senator Robert Dole decided to have a hearing on cults in DC, invited me to speak along with a survivor of the People's Temple. I fly to DC and I arrive at Congress, and then I'm told that the schedule is changed and the ex-member and myself are off the hearing. And all I knew was that the Moonies were protesting Bob Dole, who had ambitions to run for president and elect Bob Dole president, repeal the First Amendment. And I realized there's really something dirty going on here. So when I returned from DC, really upset, I decided I would read the entire congressional investigation, which was 11 volumes and verbatim testimony in these volumes, and I have all of them, and they're at the Library of Congress. And why I said what I said is the founder of the Korean CIA said that he, quote, organized and utilized the Unification Church for use as a political tool, unquote. And what I came to understand, because I talked with some ex-CIA agents and other people, was that there were 2 unsuccessful coups in South Korea. They were very worried about North Korean brainwashing. They wanted to stabilize the regime of South Korea. And so the CIA operations department decided we will help the South Korean government create a KCIA, and we will choose a proxy group to counter brainwash dissidents in South Korea. And they chose the frickin' Moonies. And Colonel Bohee Pak was a military colonel who was the chief translator for Moon, was the CIA KCIA liaison person in DC. So enough said on this topic, but please read Combating Chapter 2 if you want to know more. Next question: how do you get people out of the MAGA cult? You don't get them out. You help them to get themselves out. This is a very important distinction. I've been saying this for decades. What works to help somebody in a mind control cult and what's counterproductive and even pushes people more deeply in. When people try to argue rationally, logically, to a cult member, attacking the leader, the doctrine, or the policy, it activates the cult self to be defensive and to view you as the enemy. It drives them deeper in. If you understand mind control is a dissociative disorder, a person's real self is still in there. The whole art is how to build rapport and trust, how to make them feel safe, asking them good questions, listening, mirroring back what you've learned, and asking them more questions. And what works is finding out from them, do they believe that brainwashing exists? And if the answer is yes, then it means then you ask them, have you watched any documentaries? Have you read any books about other cults? And if they say, yes, I saw the documentary on Nexium, or I saw something on the Fundamentalist Latter-day Saints, then you talk about mind control in those groups that they already believe are brainwashing. What I found most effective for people in MAGA is to talk about Chinese communist brainwashing that's happening to this day, or pimps and traffickers and how they operate and recruit and indoctrinate and create a false identity.
We're having some technical difficulties, but Steve should be right back. Hold on. Thank you.
And only you should control it, and that there are state actors and many different cults that understand hypnosis, understand how to use your personal data to figure out, and AI, I should add at this point, how to hack your mind, how to find where you have doubts about your identity. Maybe you were traumatized. Maybe you were raised in an authoritarian country and came to the United States. There are many different ways that people can get hacked. But knowledge is power, and you can defend yourself if you understand the framework and the techniques. And I did a TEDx talk called How Can I Know If I've Been Brainwashed? We have a bytemodel.com free anonymous survey. We are offering tools for people to reality test in order to assess. And in the end, we have to come back to values. I believe in honesty. I believe in integrity. I believe that I should keep my word. I believe that I should not do to others what I don't want done to myself. The golden rule that lying is not okay. That if you think about it for a minute, would you ever knowingly go into business with a pathological liar who has a long documented history of lying? Would you marry such a person? And if the answer is an obvious no way, Why would we elect them president and give them the most powerful office in the world? Right? Without mind control, no one would vote for a 34-time convicted felon who's abused women, who's a racist, who's a bigot. Please, think about it. So Millie says, what can I say to my friends and family who love Trump? I would say, Millie, say, I love you. Remind them of the good times you were together. Remind them of, if you were church going or Jewish or whatever, remind them of their values and ask them questions. Help me understand. What do you think about the feud between Musk and Trump? And then be quiet and let them think and wait for an answer and then ask a follow-up question. But pick questions that you think might have fertile ground for that person. There's a lot I have in my Freedom of Mind book. The subtitle is Helping Loved Ones from Controlling People, Cults, and Beliefs. It is kind of formulaic how to help people get out of cults. They need to figure out for themselves that they got duped. If you tell them they've been duped, they get defensive. Nobody wants to, be ashamed or embarrassed. And if anything, if you were a former cult member, share your story. Talk about your feelings, what you thought you were getting involved with, and how you realized it and how uncomfortable it was, but you got out. And now how happy you are that you got out. The more people who share their stories with coworkers, neighbors, friends, and other people, the more we can destigmatize the fact. And what we definitely don't want to say to our family and friends who voted for Trump is call them names or accuse them or say you'll never talk to them again or block them. This is a big mistake. And just say, I want you in my life. If we need to, let's not talk about politics. Let's just hang out, watch movies, go bowling, go fishing, go dancing. Let's have life, because it's inevitable things are going to get more extreme, and there will be a tipping point for most American citizens where they know in their heart this is bad and this is wrong and they don't support it. So I want to thank Nancy Wallace for $5 and Pear Character lifting some weights saying keep it up. I don't know what Pear Character means, but it sounds interesting. And thanks Be Heard for TikTok for the gifts. I feel a little odd even asking for support financially and asking for gifts, but honestly, we're underfunded and we could be doing so much more. And I want to do so much more. So Eliza says, been super grateful. My MAGA mom has been open to reading mine opening Christian books like Brant Hanson's Unoffendable. It's a step in the right direction away from MAGAism. I'm all for incremental shifts in people's perceptions. So I'm really anything that works, that helps build rapport and trust, that helps the person to start reality testing is a good thing. And be patient and kind. Was it 1 Corinthians 13? Patience and kind and just know that you believe in the person is a good person and they are going to do the right thing as they come back in touch with their values. Dr. H, I appreciate your calm demeanor and wisdom during the chaotic shit show we are living in. Thank you, Aldana in Nebraska. You're very welcome. Honestly, I am, I'm an elder. I, I'm doing this work. I've had a great life. I'm doing this work for everyone else, especially for young people. My child, I have a 22-year-old son and grandchildren that are out there, and everyone else's children. And we need to stand up for the innocent. We need to stand up for our planet and not polluting it and not poisoning it and warming it faster. This is what all the fossil fuel countries and corporations like the Kochs made a deal with Trump and gave him $1 billion+. The crypto industry gave him tons of money, and he's making a lot himself. And it's like so criminal. It's just the opposite of how we could live together on one planet. We need to really decry anybody who upholds that lying is okay, or there's such a thing as alternative truth, because there isn't. It's called a lie. And we need to pay attention that the Trump administration is threatening corporations, CBS, ABC, and we're losing independent journalism. And I've been a long time advocate for independent investigative journalism, and thought that we should have $1 for every citizen who pays taxes go into a fund for an independent journalism organization that doesn't depend on advertisers, where they're just investigating powerful people who are doing harm for the sake of protecting the public. Mrs. Toe, the future of mind hacking is going to be far worse than anything we can imagine. Well, I can imagine a lot, and I can tell you that real life is where it's at, not virtual reality. And I'm seeing more and more of these robots, whether they're sex robots or whatever, the android bodies and stuff. And these tech bros, they really want transhumanism. They really think that they're going to be able to implant their consciousness into robots so they can live forever. And I really like being in a body, and I like, looking into eyes that are real and not fake. Um, and we're in the midst of an AI revolution where we could be losing a lot of jobs because AIs will be able to do them faster and cheaper and and more efficiently than humans. And I worry about that. And how are people going to afford to pay rent and pay for food for their families? And it's thought-provoking at the very least. But I also believe we really need to think about solutions. And I'm so frustrated with the Democrats. They keep squabbling amongst themselves. We need to build coalitions. We need everybody to stand up together. We can work out differences later, but we need everyone to stand up together against Trump. And I love that AOC and Bernie Sanders are turning out large crowds, but I don't agree with their message that all billionaires are evil. I understand there are 500 billionaires who are Americans, and we know some 60 are in the cult of Trump. I want the 440 other billionaires to step up and pony up some funds and really roll up their sleeves and say, we're going to do this for the sake of our legacy and for the sake of planetary survival. And I think it's a mistake to demonize any group of people, to be honest. And I do believe there'll be millions of people leaving the cult of Trump as they lose jobs, as they lose subsidies, when they lose their Medicaid or Medicare or Social Security. There will be lots of people very upset, and we want to welcome them. And I apologize. We had some type of glitch again. We had it last week. I don't know what's going on. It wasn't on my end, but I see it's 2:00, and we're going to continue to do messaging. So if you haven't signed up for our weekly email newsletter, please do. You can go to freedomofmind.com and sign up with your email address. You have to confirm you want it. Please sign up for my Substack. Please sign up for my YouTube, and follow me at Cult Expert on these different platforms, and stay in touch and stay optimistic and hopeful. Take care, everybody. Bye.